In today's lecture, we will discuss the constructors. So what is a constructor? So in the previous lecture, we have discussed, if you want to refer to it, that will be objects and classes one. Whenever we say we are creating a new object of a class, we want to give it some instruction so that we create the object in a certain state. So for that purpose, I will bring in my example in Python tutor. So I will bring in my Python tutor code in here. As you can see, I have a class. Here I have the class person, and in here I have I have two variables, name and age. But here I have two special type of methods. If you take a look at that, the first method has no instructions and it doesn't take any parameters in it as well, or doesn't take any arguments. The second function is also there, which is the same name as the class name. So with the same class name, I have two functions here. These two functions are called constructors. So a constructor is a special function whose name must be exactly the same as the name of the class. You can have multiple constructors if you want. I have two in here. One that just creates an object in the RAM without any prior information about its state. The other one is this one. It does take some information. So if you want to use this constructor, you have to provide the name value and the age value. And when you provide that, this particular set of statements will set the values of the variables that determine the state of the object. Now, one other thing that I show you here is that although this is a function, it does not return a value. Okay, it does not return a value. There is another function, you can see it. This is a regular function. It's not a constructor because it does not have the same name as the class. So it's not a constructor, it's a regular function. It does return something which a regular function, which a constructor would not return. So do understand, a constructor does not have a return type. A constructor can accept variables or doesn't have to provide variables in there. And a constructor has exactly the same name as the class. So let's play around a little bit with that and see how things will work out when we use both of the constructors. So here you see a class which I am calling test. This class makes use of our person class. It creates an instance of our person class which we call person1 by using a new operator. That means it is demanding a place in the RAM where it can store the value about our person. But while doing so, it is calling the constructor function which accept the variables names. So we are providing Ashton for the name as it requires the name first, and we are providing 56 as an integer which will be in the place of the age in here. Take a look at this second person or second object that we are creating. This one does not take any values, so it goes into this particular constructor, or it calls this particular constructor. So what we learned here is that we can have more than one constructor, and we have to understand that a constructor has the same name as the class, and there could be more than one constructor and does not have a return type. Now, what is the purpose of the constructor? The purpose of the constructor is that it is called when we demand a new place or new object in the RAM. So by calling or by providing the instructions in the constructor, we can tell the computer how the initial state of the object should be set. Now take a look at this. Let me run this program. Like I said, I'm using Python tutor, which you can also use for Java programs. So here we have, oh, I should, whenever you have more than one class in one single file, only one of them could be a public class. So I have to take that out. So let's go and check it out how that will execute. So if I go and check, so let's run this. I go to the next statement. It created two instances. One, you can see that the person one actually has the name and age variables defined as the ones that we have passed in there, but person 2 has a null for a name because we did not provide any. And that's about it. That's where our program ends. Okay, so our program created two instances or two objects in the RAM. The first one is related to person 1. The address of this location is saved in the person 1, or we can say that person 1 is a reference to this object. Person 2 is the object of this reference, but it does not have any values. Now what can we do? We can actually play around with this person, and what we can do is we will take this person 2 and we can say that person 2 dot set name. We can set the name of person 2 and then we can set it to, let's say, Chad. Let's see how that affects. So let's go in here and visualize our see. When we go in here, you can see Ashton is created. And you can see that the person 2's name is set to be Chad. So we can do that. Now, do we always need a constructor? Do we always need a constructor in a class? No. So let's edit this code and then take out both of the constructors. Let's comment them out. So by commenting them out, we don't have any constructor in the class. So what will happen is when you don't have a constructor, in this case we have commented it out, that is equivalent to not having a constructor. When you don't have a constructor, you are given a default constructor. A default constructor is exactly like this one. A default constructor is an empty constructor that does not take anything and does not return anything back. So even if I do that, I will, and if I comment this one out because I don't want this one to be called. So if I go and run this, let's see what will happen. So now check it out. Let's go ahead and go to the next command. You can see that I have the constructor call. There is no constructor because all of them are being commented out. All of them are commented out. There is no constructor in the code, but as we move forward, it will call an empty constructor on its own, and the empty constructor will be called, and it will be like we had a constructor already in there. So what we have learned is that if you don't have a constructor, we were given a constructor by default in Java. Now take a look at that. If we do this, if we do a little bit this thing that we keep this one, let's see, we keep the constructor with the name in here, and when we kind of comment it out, so what will happen is we will get an error. Why? Because if you provide a constructor, then you lose your default constructor. So we have provided a constructor that fits this, but we were assuming that this is our default constructor that Java has, the empty constructor that doesn't take anything and does not provide anything in back. So when we do that, we have this constructor here, but since we provide our own constructor, we have lost our default constructor. So there will be an error in this line, because although we do have default constructor, usually we do not have one when we provide a constructor of our own. As soon as we provide a constructor of our own, so it's saying that. In which line is it fussing at? It is fussing at this line. Why? Because although the default constructor is provided if we don't have any constructor, but if you provide one constructor, you cannot call the default constructor, it is gone. So if I ask you guys that, let me edit this code and let me take out all of the constructors. How many constructor do I have in class person? The answer is I have one constructor in class person. Since I do not have any constructor at all, I have been given a default. So I have one constructor in class person. Now if I do that and I take this out, and if I ask you the question, how many constructor do I have in class person now? I still have one constructor, because by providing my own constructor, I have lost the constructor that is given to me by default. So let's put a summary of what we have learned in this particular discussion. So let's review a few things. Constructor have same name as the class. Constructor do not return anything, not even void. So void mean I am returning nothing. So we don't even have any intention of returning in either void, neither anything else. So they do not even have the return statement. Each class, when you define, is given a default constructor, but when a constructor is provided by the programmer, then the default constructor is not available anymore. And constructors basically have instructions that are called when a new object is created to make sure that the object's variable values are set at that time. So that's all about constructor in Java. In our next class, we will discuss about the different types of method and method signature, and we will continue this discussion on dynamic and static dynamic and static binding and other kind of topics in object-oriented programming. Thank you.